All right, we are here with Claude Sorbello. How are you, mate?
Jake, I am terrific, mate. Good to see you.
That's
been
good.
A while, eh?
It's been a while, yeah. I am so stoked to have you on, mate. Like as a person, business person, just overall human being. Like you've always been really good to me, and I've always seen you, as a bit of a mentor in a way, or someone I've looked up to, and your journey and everything that you've done. It's sort of, when I've looked at you, I'm like, nah, it's possible. You know, like sometimes when I'm having a bad day or something like that, I'm like, nah, like I can do this. I just got to keep going, you know. So I really appreciate it.
That means a lot to me, Jake.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, you've always had a special place in my heart as well, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, you're one of the boys that came into the house at various times, and with Christian and that, and I always knew he was on the right track when I saw boys like you around him. So
thanks. Yeah, I tried to keep him on the right track. He was
I knew it was a challenge. I knew it would have been a challenge.
He was a better influence on me though, wasn't him, I reckon. No. Cool. So, mate, I want to get into a whole bunch of stuff with you, but I just thought we'd start with, obviously I know a lot about your journey, and we've spoken in depth a little bit about business and whatnot, but maybe we just go right back to the start. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? How did you sort of get into business and all that sort of stuff?
Wow. Okay. How long have we got?
Mate, I'll go for 3 hours if you want to.
Well, I was born in Milan in northern Italy, and at the age of 9.5, my parents had this sort of view of moving to Australia. They're sort of looking, it was me and two brothers, and they wanted to have a better opportunity. They were okay, but they felt Australia would give better opportunity for us. So they essentially picked up 5 suitcases and got on a plane and moved to a country that they'd never been to, with no ability to speak any English, and with no job and no nothing, and off we went. And so we arrived in Australia, and we went from probably one of the most buoyant cities in Europe at the time to a little country town called Macknay, just west of Ingham. And we lived in a barrack, the old barracks where the old farmers used to work back in the day, which hadn't been lived in for 20, 30 years. So first thing my mum had to do was, remove all the animals that were built up in there. And so, 5 days later, I ended up in hospital. I was bitten by mosquitoes that many times. I had blood poisoning, and I was in hospital for about 4 or 5 days, and I looked like the Michelin man all blown up. And so I grew up as an immigrant, and couldn't speak a word of English, and went to school in.
Couldn't speak a word of English at 9 years old?
Nothing. No, back in Italy that wasn't a thing, so it was sort of. So it was challenging. There was change. There was everything was unknown. You know what I mean? It's like when you get taken from a world and you get dropped somewhere else, and all of a sudden everything that you knew before means nothing. You start again.
That'd be a huge culture shock too, coming to Australia compared to Italy. Like you'd be like, what?
Well, we came at a time, let's say, that Australians weren't exactly welcoming at that particular time, and they weren't sort of used to. The Italians and the Greeks were seen as coming over here and taking people's jobs, which wasn't true, because we all ended up in the farms, and we were doing the jobs that people didn't want to do, at those days.
Always the way.
Look, my life started that way, and I guess it did a couple of things. It was a matter of you had to find yourself pretty quickly, and you didn't have a lot of chance to get it wrong. And then obviously I was the oldest in my family from a kid's point of view by 5 years, so my parents relied on me to be the translator by the time I was 12, so I'd walk into a doctor's appointment with them and then have to translate what the problems were, or I'd walk into a dentist's appointment and whatever it may be. So it just sort of, it taught me to sort of grow up pretty quickly. It taught me to work hard, because you're on the farm, so they don't have unions up there or age restrictions. As long as you have 2 arms and 2 legs, mate, you're working.
You're breathing. All right, get in there.
So that's what it was like. So whether you like it or not, you got to get used to working hard. So, and but I was lucky. I had a good family, and my mum and dad did the best. They did that for us. So I sort of grew up with this attitude that I needed to do well for myself, and not just for myself, but for them, because it's a big deal when you move away from home. My parents left their parents behind. They left their brothers, their sisters, their nephews and nieces, and came over here to nothing. And 1 month after we were here, my mother lost her father. So we had to deal with that grief. And she never would have thought that she wouldn't see her dad again. So when you grow up that way, you feel as though you have to make your life mean something, because otherwise, what was the purpose of them making a sacrifice like that? So and it's sort of gone from there. And then meeting people like you, mate. That's
I never knew that
that's
about
what
you.
my life's wonderful.
I can't believe I didn't know that about you. So you started off in farming. I just never ever would have thought that. So
ask me how to string some tobacco leaves on a stick or just load a barn, mate. I can.
So how did you end up in Brisbane? How did that work? How did you?
Well, we stayed in the country for about 5.5 years, and I think my parents realised that, it was great as a starting point for them, but they knew that the city was going to offer us more opportunities in terms of schools, universities and all that kind of stuff. So they bought a house here and we moved to Brisbane in 1975. And so, 1974. So in 1975, I started my first year of school in Brisbane, which was completely different to the country. By this stage, I'd driven tractors, I'd been driving a car for about 3 years, and knew how to work and could actually speak English now, so I was able to talk to girls, which
but you didn't mind
was
that,
important back in those days.
Like, Brisbane City, young Claude, let's go.
So we moved to Brisbane, and then I did a couple of years of school, and then I wanted to be a lawyer, but I found out how much time you had to spend at university and God knows what else, and I thought, spending 7 years without any money in my pocket, and so I decided to just find a job, and I went to the it's boring, man. I went to the unemployment agency at the time. That's where people went for jobs, and put my name down. I said, look, I don't want any money because I was doing part-time work here and there. I don't want any money. I said, but if an opportunity comes for a job, then something that's got a career, then let me know. So, and I ended up at Woolworths.
That's right. You were you did really well at Woolworths. I remember you having a chat to me about that. Were you working in IT eventually?
I started in IT. I started in IT, and then I was running an IT centre, and I was probably one of the youngest managers at the time. That Woolworths had. So when they put me when they actually gave me the job, they said, the HR manager said, look, we know you're going to fail at this, but you're next in line and we're going to be looking for someone, so we'll just give you a crack on it and just see how you go. So it was kind of like, thank you very much, you're going to fail at this, but, I thought, well, I don't like failing, so you sort of,
You're not competitive at all.
So I hung on to that job, and then, after about 10 years in IT, actually, the truth is, I accidentally came across a file that was stored on our computer system from the HR department. It had the payroll of every executive in the company, and when I looked at where the IT guys were and where everyone else was, we were down here, and I thought, I'm in the wrong field. So how fun is that? I went back to university and did a marketing degree, and then changed careers, but within Woolworths. So I was able to, as Christian said earlier, I was able to pivot into a business role rather than an IT role. But I think having had an IT background in the time where IT was something really critical, it's sort of that you always carry that with you. You know what I mean? There's nothing that you end up doing the rest of your career that doesn't somehow still bring in that experience and that knowledge that you gain.
I think too with like IT people as well. I think IT people that have a very good sales or marketing, can connect those two, very hard to beat, because IT people have very good problem-solving skills. They just figure it out. They don't go and ask someone. They're just like, oh, okay, I'll click here, do this, figure this out, because that's what you have to do in IT, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So that transition into marketing, was it? I mean, not easy, but it was sort of like, oh, this is probably a little bit easier than what IT was to learn, or did you find it harder?
Look, I didn't find it harder. I loved it. It's almost like I fell into something that maybe I was meant to do. You know what I mean? So as soon as I understood what marketing meant and the power that you had, it sort of automatically just sort of lit me up. And then, when you translate that in working with one of the largest retail companies in Australia, at that time, and certainly one of the bigger ones around the world. So then, the opportunities just opened up because, by this stage, you're talking, we're sort of like 87, 88, 89, and, the world of business was starting to explode into sort of, systems automations and everything, the foundation of everything was coming from, technology as the enabler. And so, in Woolworths, the marketing side enabled itself through a thing called category management, which today is the way retail companies manage their business. But in those days, it was completely new. And, my first role, the CEO of the company, Reg Claes, who's probably one of the greatest, CEOs I think Australia's ever seen. He offered me the position, and he said, there's this new role to head up, this sort of category management movement, with another guy called Bernie Brooks. And, he gave me a blank piece of paper, and he said, look, I don't know what I should be putting on this. They said, you've got 5 years to write your own job description. And by the way, there's a guy in the United States called Dr. Brian Harris, who is considered to be the father of this category management.
How cool is that?
And that's probably going to be your first point to touch, so you can get a bit of an idea of what's going on. So it kind of is like, it was a concept, it was an ideology, I should say.
So how old were you when you got, because obviously like we sort of like fast forwarded a bit, but like how old were you when you sort of got given the reins for something that big?
I was 28.
Mate, that is
28.
Were you feeling like, are you packing it? Are you freaking out? Or
no, I was excited. I was like a bull maker.
Like, give me more. Yeah.
Well, like when you're in corporate, when you're working through corporate, it's easy to just become a number, and it's easy to just feel comfortable doing whatever. But to be able to actually work your way through and to find yourself into positions where you've got the ability to physically create change in an organisation, which is more than just moving boxes from A to B, but to physically implement or to be part of a strategic change in the organisation that throws you into the next level is what it's all about, and those roles are not many. So when you get that opportunity, and look, for me it came through through Reg. I mean, one of the things that I've always learned is in life and as a businessman that you're only who you are because somewhere along the lines open up some doors for you. And so, in turn, once you get to the stage where you can open up the doors, then it's your role to do so, And so that's what Reg was to me. He gave me an opportunity that probably a lot of other people wouldn't have. And in turn, I made sure that, I made him not regret that decision.
Unbelievable. Like, I can't imagine being at 28 years old, being handed the reins like that. And the interesting thing is they didn't give you any structure. They just said, hey, we don't know how to do this. We want you to figure it out. That is so cool. Yeah. That's such a fun time.
There was let's be honest, I was working with another guy called Bernie Brooks, and he's probably one of the most genius brains I've worked with. He was the CEO of Myer, later on became the CEO of Myer, and today he's a very successful, entrepreneur in his own rights, etc. So him and I were both working on this together. He had probably more the practical aspects of it, but strategically, we actually became the benchmark. I mean, Woolworths in Queensland became the benchmark for category management for Australia-wide, and it rolled out across the other states. I was invited to speak at conferences in the United States. The first time I went to the United States, I was so intimidated because I thought, a little Aussie boy, going over to the big smoke and, getting a stage in front of, 1,500 people from all over the world, some of the best minds in retailing, and then trying to tell them that you're doing something which is new and innovative and not really knowing whether you're pushing those boundaries or not was kind of, a bit mind-blowing. And I guess the testament was that afterwards, there was this lady came up to me and she tapped me on the shoulder and she says, my God, she says, I have no idea what you were speaking about up there, but your accent is great, So I thought, if I failed at the task, at least I managed to get my accent across.
It's true though, eh? They don't understand what we're saying,
Well, no, I think they do like the Australian accent. They've always really liked Australian accents and Australian people. So, so it was a hoot.
That's awesome, mate. So, obviously that's very much obviously working your way up in the corporate ladder, and to do it that quickly, mate, you have to be sharp. Like most people that make it that quickly, you sort of just have to give them the role because they're so sharp. Were you always, like, what was your strength? Were you a good communicator? Were you just really good problem solver? What do you think sort of got you there that quickly?
I think probably vision probably is the key thing. I've been fortunate enough in being able to sort of look at the world as it's going to be rather than as it is, and then look at business, how it potentially is going to evolve, and look at that in a way that others don't seem to, I don't know. And then the second thing too, I think, is also, it's how to break it down, you know what I mean? Some people, make situations complicated because they're complicated people. I'm a simple person, so I take complicated situations and I make them simple. But yeah, I think it's been more to do with that, Jacob. It's sort of, And as I said, there's always just been a drive, you know, like, you know, I learnt pretty young in life that, you know, life for me was going to be split into two sections. There's a part when you're young, you're full of energy, you know, you can climb any mountain, you can jump, you know what I mean? Like, look at you, you know, like Christian, you know, the two of you, you know, three of you. You know, you've got this energy which is immense. And then because I worked in an environment where a lot of my colleagues were much older than me, you know, I could also see the vulnerability that happens later in life when you become, you know, in your 40s and your 50s, where all of a sudden, whatever role you hold in there's all these other guys that are young and energetic, and they're pushing, and they want your spot. And so, you know, in those situations, you're fighting just to survive, kind of thing. So I sort of saw life broken up into two components, and I thought, well, I want to succeed at everything I want to do before I get vulnerable and walk out and say, well, I'm retired. Now you guys fight for that without me and retire early, you know. And so I was fortunate enough to do that. I retired at 44. And, you know, spent, you know, the kids were, you know, 12, 10 and 8. And so I could do what I really wanted to do. I mean, you heard Christian say before, you know, he wants to be a dad. I mean, we all want to be good dads, as you do, you know. But, you know, sometimes it's hard to do when you know, you've got to put food on the table and you've got to put kids through school, etc., etc. So, you know, for me, I felt like I'd achieved a point where I was comfortable in life. And even though I probably had reached the point in my career where the cream starts to happen, because, you know, when you're 44, that 44 to 55, that's a lot of, you know, that's where the perks come in. You know, you're making huge money, you're getting big bonuses, you've got access to everything you want. So it's not easy to walk away after you've spent 27 years working to get there. But, you know, when I looked at my three kids and their faces, and I thought, this is way more important than any of that. So it wasn't hard for me. It was easy to say it's time to, you know, to step off. You know.
Was it hard to switch that off though? Like for me, I don't know if you have this, but I have this thing that I couldn't switch it off if I tried. Like for me, I've just found business is something that I genuinely am curious about, and I don't have to drag myself out of bed to do it. I really enjoy it. It's like football without having to be fit. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to run around anymore. I'm like, oh, this is all, I can play this till I'm 80. That's how I see it. So like moving from those high pressure roles to obviously, you know, retiring and stuff, what was that like? Were you a bit lost for a little bit, or what? How did it feel?
No, look, it wasn't lost at all. So first of all, I never considered retiring. You know, I sort of stepped away. When, you know, sort of going back a little bit, when I was in my sort of mid-20s, I learnt something, and that was that, you know, if I came up to anyone and gave them my Woolworths business card, you know, like doors started to open. And so I was never alluded to the fact that I was opening those doors. I always was conscious of the fact that business card was pretty powerful, you know, so I never got full of myself. And so therefore I realised that, you know, when you're working for a large corporate brand, if you're looking for a large bank or whatever, you kind of have this motor, this brand that pushes you, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're good. You know, it just means you've got this, you've this large company. So I started doing a lot of stuff on my own, on the background. I started to invest, I started to do splitters, I started to buy property and improve it and renovate and all that sort of thing. So
was that the main thing, property, was it? Or did you have
look, I started up a giftware shop, you know, initially, because I wanted to take my mother out of working in a factory, and I didn't like the fact that she was working in a factory. So I started off a gift shop that was running from their house and put her into there. Then I started off one of the first eateries in Australia, which is at Stafford City. It was the first eatery, that was a first shopping centre that had all the food places together in a food court.
Really?
And I applied for that in 1983 and got the licence for it. And I mean, I was up against some big brands at the time, because, you know, shopping centres, they like the big shops. So I was unproven, but, you know, I was given a store, and that was the first thing, 35 square metres. We opened up a business called Sarah's Wheels on Meals. So we delivered pizzas. We were the second delivery pizza in Queensland after Silvio's, but we also delivered other food. So
what was that journey like, going through that? Because obviously, like, that's a whole new world, eh? Like, you glazed over it, but there's so many things happening there. Like,
there is. Well, I mean, I'm laughing because, you know, like being the son of an Italian mum, you know, the only time I was allowed in the kitchen was to eat. So to actually then say I set up a restaurant, you know, the first thing I had to learn was I walked in, it's like, oh shit, now what do I do with this 35 square metres, you know? How do I set it up? What do I buy? What don't I buy? What do I need, you know? So it was like, ooh, you know, huge learning curve. But again, you know, like, I think, you know, people like you, like Christian, you know, you already show, you know, you're the sort of, you've already got in you the drive, and so it doesn't matter what the challenge is. At the end of the day, once you make up your mind and you say, well, I'm going to do this, you just find the resources, you find the drive, you find the initiative, you find all the things that you need to make it happen, you know? So yeah, that was good. I mean, so that's what helped me. I don't think I would have been ready to retire at 44 if it was just purely on my corporate life, you know? But the fact that I had probably another 50-60% of everything that I did came out of my own drive, you know, that was a big difference kind of thing. So back to your question, it wasn't really retiring. I was going to spend more time being a father. I still kept my mind active. I still did some developments. I still did all those things.
How did you learn how to do that stuff? Did you just self-taught?
Absolutely.
That's crazy. Hey, just figured it out.
Well, the first one I ever did, I was 24, and I bought a property in Mitchelton, and it was a corner block, and you could potentially subdivide it into 3. But after I bought it, we ran into a state election, and the two parties were in each other because the Liberal parties were supporting smaller blocks and the Labor Party wasn't. And so the winner of this was potentially going to determine whether this block could be subdivided into 2 or 3. And all my eggs were sitting on the fact that I could go into 3. It was the first time. So I put all the application in, and I had checked just before the election happened, and they said, look, it's been approved. It's now sitting in the pile for approval. So they're great. You know, I was excited. And then the election happened, and you know, the party that was against it won, and then all of a sudden I was told, hey, it's now been held up.
So what year is this? when would this be?
This would have been 84.
84. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then, then I received the paperwork, and it said it's been declined. And so you sort of, I was pretty young, and didn't really. Well, I understood what had happened. I just got caught up in politics, but what do you do about it? So I started writing to anybody and everybody, and I somehow got a meeting with the Lord Mayor, who put me through to the head of development. And so I rocked up to the head of development with my town planner, hoping that we could say something. He had his town planner in the room, and so the discussion started. And after about 8 minutes of discussion, this gentleman, who's very experienced, and he was in his 50s, turned around and said, Claude, do you mind if we empty the room and we finish this meeting just the 2 of us? And I said, sure. I was shitting myself. Because, you know what I mean? Like, he was as intimidating as it got, like it was, high floor in the council building, etc. And then he turned around and he said to me, Claude, do you understand what's happened here? And I said, yeah. I said, I've been caught in the middle of this political game. And I said, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to give up on this. So I'm going to fight because it's my livelihood. This is about my future. And he said, well, look, if you were to go from here down to the local courts, and if you were to lodge an application to the courts to appeal our decision, there is a strong chance that I as counsel would not come in and defend it.
That's what he said.
And he said, it's going to cost you $150 to lodge the application. So
what were you thinking? You're like, what is
I just thought I made my best friend, mate. What are you going to think? I'm like, hey, do you have a daughter my age? I was pretty excited. So I did. I went straight down to the courts, and I mean, you do find yourself in difficult situations. I think if you know what you want, if you know what you believe in, I think that gives you that strength. You sort of believe in yourself, you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe that you can achieve what you want to achieve, and you got to believe you're just as good as the next guy. And then you've got to find that strength to pick your fights, and once you want to pick the ones that you want to win, then you don't lose,
It's so interesting, like just that whole situation. That's very much like business. Well, I've found, hey, like just because someone says no at this door doesn't mean that's no forever. You just go to the next door. And then you ask again, and they say no. You're like, that's all good. There's another door. I'm going to knock on that one. And then you just keep going until someone goes, and you're like, gotcha. You're like, all right, there's a bit of an in here. I got it, So it's like talking about that, I think that's really important for young people to understand, because I sort of came up through sales. So I found sales was very similar to football. It was like, you try this play, it doesn't work. Try this play, it doesn't work. Try this play, you finally score a goal. Like, that's sort of the way I saw sales, no, yes, And I think like that, the way you sort of describe that is probably how you've lived. Like when you're in business, it's probably just how you've always gone, which you probably don't even notice it. Even when you're working at Woolies, this didn't work. All right, go again. This didn't work, go again. And everyone else is like, that guy's crazy. Until you pull it off, and then everyone's like, oh, he's a genius, So it's interesting that you say that. So that was so you got that first deal through. So 1 into 3 in the corner block in Mitchelton. Nice.
Yeah. And then went from there. I just did a series of similar things, sort of 1 into 2s, 1 into 3s, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into doing some townhouses, and then that evolved into doing a commercial properties, and and then everyone was different, everything was new. Yeah. So I've never been a builder, so when Christian came along as a builder, I thought, oh, perfect, this is great.
And your other son's a mortgage broker, so I was just like, oh, this is match made in heaven, like.
Because I'm a big picture guy, so when it comes down to the sort of the details, when I start getting the builders or the carpenters trying to explain to me in detail, well, this bit won't fit into that and that, I automatically lose concentration, but big picture stuff, then that's when I'm focused.
Yeah, so cool.
So,
So property was a big one for you, hey? Because you've got, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it a law firm as well? You got a law firm?
I'm a director in a law firm,
and obviously, Caravan World, and then the mortgage broking as well.
Brisbane Home Loans.
Yeah. So you've
best mortgage broker in Brisbane, by the way.
Absolutely. Jordan, if you want. But they're just watching those verticals, you're like, oh, sort of all just works in line with each other. You know what I mean? You sort of need your conveyancing or your solicitors or things like that. And if you want to build, you got a builder. You're sort of like, did you plan it out? Like when you're like, I'm going to have some kids, I'm going to have a builder over here, I'm going to have a mortgage broker, and I'm going to have a lawyer.
No.
Come on, Claude. You can be on it. I'm going to develop all of Breckenridge.
I think planning it, like I've always been, as a dad, I've never wanted to be forcing my kids to do anything. So no, it wasn't planned. But I always believe that, like if you, as a parent, if you set the right example for your kids, then your kids kind of aspire to do some of the things that you're doing, So in my own mind, I thought, well, again, as I said, I like to look into the future, and I could see back then that, the future is going to be hard on people because, if you're young and you're starting off and you've got nothing, you got to be exceptional. You just can't be just good. You got to be exceptional to be successful, or you got to be very lucky. So the future, it really involves what I call generational money or family money, because you kind of have one generation builds something and then tries to hand it to the next generation in such a way that they can manage it, but it has to fit for them. If it doesn't fit for them, you're handling something that you don't want, and that doesn't work. That creates problems. So my mind was, well, if the kids go down that path, then obviously what are we going to be? And to me, I couldn't be a corporate guy, because that's how corporate was my way to achieving my personal objective rather than, my professional objectives. That didn't matter to me. My family mattered more. But that was something that I could try and create something, and then if the kids were in that same game, then it would be a catalyst for them to then, move into. So the notion that, one was a lawyer, well, that made sense to have a law firm, but she chose to be a lawyer. And then the other one wanted to be, I wanted him to go into business, because I felt that, he probably wasn't going to be happy working on the roofs and, in the sun and underneath holes and shit like that. But, it didn't work for him. So he then became a builder again, by himself. He made that choice, And Jordan went into an accountant, and he was very good at it. And a broker. So when you look at all those three things, then and you look at property development and construction, etc., and you put that in the middle of it, well, it all goes ching, ching, ching.
Just need a real estate agent,
and exactly.
I'm like, what's that? What do you reckon?
Can we do a DNA test?
What do you reckon? I'll do a look a bit Italian,
Exactly.
No, it's cool. It's honestly, mate, how everything's all played out and stuff. I think it's really cool. And with your kids, because I've had kids now, and there's all these things that I think about with kids now that I'd never thought about before. So like I never had any money growing up, you know what I mean? So like I always had a roof over my head, I had food on the table, but could never go on holidays, never had a nice car or anything. Not that matters, but you know, just if something went wrong, we would sort of be not in a great position, you know? So I worked really hard to try and create that, or I'm trying to create that for my family. And what I found is like the reason I'm so driven is because I come from that. Because like when you're farming and all that sort of stuff, you come from this dark place where it's like you're not comfortable there, but you've been there. You're like,
it's
working 18 hours a day is nothing in aircon.
It's familiar.
Sweet, this is easy. I'm not out in the farm, you know. So like I look at my kids, I'm like, how do I instill that in them? Because I want them to have that little like switch, you know, where they can go after it. And it's really, even now, like they have things that I didn't have growing up, and I'm like, oh, should I, you know, even send them to like a really nice school that they're going to, like costs a lot of money, like I never had that, or even just having a nice pool in my backyard, you know, like that seems stupid, but when I was growing up, I was playing under the sprinkler, you know. So did that ever come into your head when you're parenting? Did that ever,
It's every day.
How did you manage that?
Every day. Oh, look, it's not easy because, you know, you've got to also understand times change. So, you know, there's a lot of things going against you. You know, they go to school and, you know, like my kids will come home from school and go, oh, Daddy, you know, so-and-so bought their kid a car. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, look, everyone has different parenting skills, but I agree with what you're saying. I think it's important as parents that you keep your kids grounded. Yeah, it's like somebody that, you know, is young and becomes very successful at sport or as a musician or anything like that where success is there. Unless they've got somebody very close to them that keeps them grounded, it's very easy to get lost in all that nonsense kind of thing, you know. So to me, it was all about keeping it real, you know, and understanding that making their life easy today was also maybe not making their life easy tomorrow. So it's better to make it harder today so that it can be easier tomorrow. And I think I'm pretty lucky because I think my three kids, you know, but you know, they went to university, they worked. You know, we helped them, but we didn't pay for the university. We allowed them to get a tech debt if they needed to, kind of thing. We didn't have to do that, but they had to learn these lessons, you know. They had to work for things. When they're all young, they all had some sort of a job. You know. Again, we didn't have to. I tried to, and when they were at school, I tried to keep them away because I thought, you're going to spend your whole life working. So, but I knew that was probably the wrong decision because, you know, that also allows them to get a little bit. But you know, whether it was coaching at kindy soccer or running the canteen at the club or whatever it was, you know, they all did something. So, yeah, you got to remind yourself that you are who you are today because of where you started. You know, if you'd started from a very wealthy background or whatever it may be, you probably wouldn't have the drive that you've got today because things were easy. So when you remind yourself of that, then it's not hard to be the parent where you don't make it easy for your kids until you understand they've now reached a point where and then the giving becomes easier kind of thing, you know. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. But then, you know, like the thing is that, you know, life takes its turns, you know, like if you start spoiling them young and then something happens to you and you go and you're gone, then what do? If they haven't got the life skills, if they haven't got that drive, if they haven't got that ambition, if they haven't got all those things, and then how the hell are they going to raise your grandchildren if they haven't learnt the lessons that they need to learn? So, you know, it's part of the responsibility of being a father is not to get confused in trying to be, you know, the cool dad that look at me, I can, you know, do whatever, versus being the realistic dad that takes into account that life isn't always easy, and you know, and we don't, you know, we're not all born with everything perfect, and I think learning to fight in life is important because you know, shit, if you don't have that, what do you got? You know, like if you're not able to fight for what you believe in, if you're not able to fight for what's yours and all those sorts of things, then what do? We just go in a circle and then, you know, we've done our tour, you know, we went skiing, you know. Yeah, it's more to it than that, you know, life more than that, you know, and, you know, you said something really important before. You said, you know, that you were talking about your relationship with Christian, you know, how that worked. You know, I'd like to think that maybe I had a little bit to do with that, you know, because, you know, I've always taught these guys that, you know, good friends are important, you know, they matter. It's not, you know, you don't trade them off for nothing, you just, you know. You definitely had something to do with that, mate. Like Christian is like that. Like,
even like when I first went to that club, you know, you go to a new club and I'd never really played at that level before, and I hadn't played in a few years at that time, and I just found like the younger kids there, we had a whole crew there, and they, you know, they had their own people they hung out with and stuff, but I always found some of the younger kids coming through, they were the most accepting, probably the most mature, which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so I would chat to Christian, he was always quite reserved, emotionally intelligent in the field, like, or maybe not when he got a little bit older, but him and Cammy causing a ruckus up front, but you know, he was just always reserved and, you know, kept his calm, and even with Jamie Lee as well, she was good, obviously, with the team and all that sort of stuff. So I always just found dealing with him, that's what I really liked about him, because I felt that he didn't have to be someone that you weren't around him. He just liked you who you were. He didn't, and he would talk to anybody. You know, you could be the bloody water boy, you could be the people who scores all the goals, and he'd talk to you exactly the same way, you know. So I think he definitely had something to do with that, man. So
well, that was an example. I mean, just sorry to interrupt you, but that, you know, being president of that club and having your kids there, I mean, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. You know, you know, it's easy to be the president and make your kids' life easy, but in actual fact, most of the coaches that came through there all would leave saying the same thing. You know, we've never worked with a president that actually didn't push his own kids, you know, because I didn't, you know, and in fact for them it was harder than the rest, because they had to work even harder to make sides or do it, because you know, the coaches knew that they weren't going to impress me by just giving them an easy ride. In fact, I would be pissed off, you know, if they gave them an easy ride. So
it'd be hard, you know. Your names on the scoreboard, I think it was. Where did you have it? I think it was on the scoreboard, wasn't it? It was on the scoreboard, yeah. So that does come with pressure. Not that you would try and put, you know, extra pressure on them, but that definitely, I think, they'd probably think about it in the back of their mind if they, you know. So we obviously spoke about a lot of your strengths in, you know, life and business and all that sort of stuff. But what do you think maybe your biggest weakness was coming through? Like, was there something where you're like, oh, I really needed to work on that in my life? Like, was there something that you weren't very natural at with business? Or?
Look, probably, I think one of the hardest things in a corporate world is that, you know, you being too entrepreneurial can go against you. You know what I mean? You can make a lot of enemies along the way if you are too entrepreneurial. So it's the notion of being able to bring people with you. I think the older I got, the more impatient I got. And to me, it was sort of, you know, so, you know, I consider myself a little bit a small entrepreneur, and I think, you know, in the world of success, you don't have time to always get 10 people to agree on everything. You know, there are times where that works, but there are times where you have to make decisions and then you got to act. And so, you know, I don't think I was, you know, if I had to do it again, I would probably try to be a little bit more inclusive, but it doesn't work. So for me, it's not something that I wanted to do. You know, so in a corporate world, that, you know, that's a skill you need to have. You need to be more inclusive. You need to bring people with you. You need to do all those sorts of things. But in business, it's not like that. You know, in business, it's quick, it's fast, it's you know,
direct.
And you've got to be confident. You've got to be confident in your own decision making. You've got to be confident on, you know, what to say. So in terms of what was my weakness, maybe I probably could be a little bit more, you know, listen to more people along the way. I don't consider that a weakness, to be honest.
It's a hard one, eh? Like, you look back and you think, like, sometimes, like, you look at things, like I look at someone, like I used to think like my weakness was I was a little bit inappropriate sometimes. Like if I'm in a meeting, I'll just be exactly who I am. I'm not going to put a front on for anyone. Doesn't matter what deal I'm doing or whatever. I'm like, this is exactly who I am. I'm not business Jacob, or this is me, you know. So
Donald Trump, maybe
not that bad. I just if you do a deal with me, I want you to know exactly who you're in the deal with. I don't want any like Jacob's this person wants to, like this is who I am, you know. If you want someone who's real energetic and will do everything I can to get it done, well, that's who you're gonna, you know. So I used to think that as a real weakness, you know. So now I see it as like a real strength.
Of course.
Because I walk into people's rooms and, you know, list their house, and never met them before, and I'll get the listing over somebody else because I'm just so real and a bit loose. Like I'd be so, you know what is so interesting, Claude, is like I always thought people like yourself and all of that were so far above me and whatnot, and I just thought that like the way they communicate would be different and all. They're exactly like me. Like it would be like refreshing for them. So I'd walk in and everyone would come in real professional. I'd be like, oh, what's going on, bro? Like, and they would love it. I knew my shit, obviously. I was good at my job, but that side is now like my big strength, you know? So I think there's two sides to it, eh?
Yeah. And look, you know, it's been proven time and time again, you know, people like winners. So, you know, when they see a winner,
seriously,
they just any small things that maybe are not perfect, it's easy to take them off the table because they want to be part of the winning team, and that's obviously what you've got. And I think putting on the table, you know, who you are up front is important. And clearly people are believing that. Look at you, you've done so well, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I think like if you can find someone that's like you too, like you mentioned that like red tape and including everyone. If you find someone that's no bullshit and can get the job done, you latch onto them.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh my God, this guy's no bullshit. I know he's going to get the job done. This is so rare. So I try and be that person for my clients. So it's like, can this be done? No. Can this be done? Yes. When can it be done? Now. Deliver on the expectation. And then there's no, you know, I found like that's a really important thing.
Absolutely.
So I've got a note to talk about Albany Creek, man, because the year that you had a big speech, you could tell how passionate you were about the club, and there was someone who was joking, said boo, and you told him to shut up. You're like, no, I'm going to have my time, you know, and just like fully like just told everyone how passionate you were about the club. I also got Players Player that year too. But I could see how passionate you were about that club, and now that I've got kids, I see it. I didn't see it back then, but now I can see myself in that exact position. Like that's where I want to be for my boys one day. So like, how did it all come about with Albany Creek? And obviously it's important to you. Tell me about the journey, how you got involved and everything.
Yeah. Well, look, we came back from Hong Kong and we spent, you know, a lot of time there, being a dad, but I was going, you know, obviously reconnecting with a lot of people that I hadn't seen for a long time. And just about every dinner party we went to and every party we went to, the conversation turned to young people, you know, and there was sort of a bit of a judgmental view. You know, sort of young people were, you know, boasting drugs and alcohol, and you know that was such a big Australian way, and you know, and all this sort of thing, and there was a lot of criticism being voiced in that direction. And I found myself one day I was driving on the highway with Uttara, and I said to her, I said, isn't it funny that we're hearing a lot of people talk about this, but I haven't heard anyone that sort of talked about what they're doing to help fix it.
Action.
So it was like, you know, and I said, you know, it's almost like, you know, the old Indian tribes, you know, it was up to the elders to sort of do things, you know. And I said to her, you know, we're now in that role. And sort of at the same time as this was happening, the whole committee at Albany Creek decided to walk away, and the club was going to be lacking a committee and potentially would have had to shut down. And so they asked me and they said, why don't you join and become president? And my natural reaction was, what am I going to do? I've never run a football club. I've got no idea. I've played football, but I've never been in football. And they said, oh, you know, your business skills come into play, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, look, no, absolutely not. That's not something I do. And that was that. And then a couple of weeks went past and we were talking with Uttara about this, you know. And then the same guy turned up and he brought over a balance sheet and a P&L for the club. But he said, I know you said no, but have a look at this and see if this changes your mind in any way.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the P&L and I thought, I can understand this. I looked at the balance sheet and I thought, I can understand that. I can see they've got a problem here, problem there. Like all of a sudden, it wasn't about running a football club, it was about running a business, and I knew how to do that, you know. And I said to Uttara, I said, this club's got 550 kids, you know, and maybe this could be the project. Maybe if we instill into this club a culture of family, if we instill into this culture some culture of respect, instill into this club a winning philosophy, and instill a professionalism that makes these young kids want to be more professional as a club than what's out there, but not win at all cost. If we can do those things, then maybe we are then going to be raising or help raise better kids, because a coach has more power than what a parent does, as you probably know. You know, times for your dad tell you not to do something 10 times, but if your coach told you to do it once, you do it, right?
Definitely have done that.
Exactly. So, and that's how it came about, and so it became a bit of a project, because we thought, well, if we can succeed in doing this and do it in this club, there is a possibility that other clubs around, whether they'd be soccer clubs or football clubs or swimming club, whatever, other clubs would look at this and say, hang on, this is something we could do as well. So that it'd have a bit of a ripple effect and start to affect, more than. So the plan was, introduce family skills, turn up to there, shake hands with the coach, when you first arrive. Don't turn up looking like a grub. Wear shoes, wear your bag. Tell parents you can't just drop off and piss off. You've got to stay there. Bring a little bit more of those sort of things in. And then drive the coaching side, bring in good coaches.
Yeah.
Teach the coaches that they have more than a responsibility just to teach them how to play football, but also to be decent human beings, to be respectful. You remember that every time an ace side finished playing, they would go to their parents and they would clap.
Yeah.
That never used to happen in the club. We introduced it and said it's compulsory. You must do it because.
Yeah.
So and man, it was a great ride. And so I was passionate for that reason because I thought someday when these kids turn 18, like when I turned 18, we were streetwise. You know what I mean? I was going down the street and I was guys pulling knives at me, called me a wog.
Really?
But I knew how to handle myself. I was never afraid of that, you know? I could face it. So whatever happened on the street, and I could deal with kind of thing. But I saw that kids were not being raised that way, So when they get to that 18 and they experience alcohol for the first time, they're not used to it. They drink too much, then that's when, a parent can lose a child, And so the philosophy was, if the only thing we achieve is we create friends around each kid, and that friendship continues when they find themselves in the valley for the first night at 18, and they get into trouble, they look around, hopefully there is some other kids that they know, and automatically they walk into a when you walk into a club and you know somebody, you feel good, right? Hey man, how you going?
So good.
It's that relationship gives you importance, gives you a sense of belonging, versus not knowing anybody. So that was the motivation, and that's why I was passionate about it. That's why I was passionate about the kids. I was passionate about the committee. I was passionate about, seeing kids like you coming through and then getting back into the club and helping, like Cameron Miller, coaching. I mean, God.
He's a weapon.
Just won Coach of the Year.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Just a couple of nights ago. To me, that's like
must be weird
ultimate.
Watching that whole journey.
It's the ultimate reward for your life. It's, you got your kids, you got your family, but then to actually see a project that you start that works its way through, and Cam still calls me and we touch base and we're good mates and he still respects what I say kind of thing. And so, it's those things that, when you're talking about your kids, because that's what drives you. Part of me also said, if I want my kids to play football, I want them to play in a good club.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of that education. I don't want them to, go like North Star back then.
Banked them when I was playing. We beat them like 7-1 or something last time I played them. But it's cool, and it also it has this strange impact on your kids when they see. For me, the way I look at my kids is I don't want to tell them how to do something. I just want to show them. And just if I say make your bed, Dad makes his bed. Do you know what I mean? So when I go to work and I go, that's what I loved about my dad. Dad would work all day, he'd go to training with me and he'd be there till 9 o'clock at night when all the kids had left at 8:30 and I was shooting at the goal. He would stand behind the goal, catch all the ball. That stuff just has a strange impact on you when you get older and you start to have kids. You realise you're like, oh my God, that is effort on effort on effort for parents,
Yeah.
Because he would get home, we'd have to sort all my soccer crap out. I would just go straight to bed. He'd have to shower, try and connect with my mum for half an hour or whatever and talk to her, and then he'd be back at work, So you look back at that stuff now, as kids, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, I was so lucky to have my dad around like that. Yeah. So I think having you around the club and commanding respect from people, showing leadership, it just I think it has a real big impact on all your kids,
Definitely. And as you said, whether it's business or life, you talk the talk, walk the walk, that's it's just so important. And I think if you're going to be successful in business, you've got to lead by example, because anyone that works for you is going to imitate you. They're going to copy what you do. So if you're slack, they're going to be slack. 9 times out of 10, if you've got criticism about your employees, you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh shit, it's because I've done it's when you set that absolute, we want to be the best team, and I'm leading to be the best team. I worked in Hong Kong for 6 years, you know, and not one of my employees would leave the office until after I left. Not one. Yeah. And these were all senior executives, all MBAs, you know, all MBAs that were working for me. Not one person would leave the office. That was the culture over there. Nobody leaves the office. If the boss is here, you know, you work. So, you know, as a parent, you know, which is where the question you asked me about, that's absolutely important. You know, you can't be perfect. You know, if we think as human beings we're perfect, but the fact that you are smart enough to realise what it was that your father did for you has helped you reach and understand, because quite often, you know, kids don't have that realisation. Everything's taken for granted. You're a dad, so therefore I'm expecting you to do these things. But when you don't expect your father to do that, and you acknowledge that's something that was an expectation, that's how you become a great dad, because you then in turn you translate that back into your own kids. You know.
So interesting, hey? Like just the little markers that you don't notice that are happening when you're growing up, and then you get older, you're like, oh, actually, I'm actually pretty disciplined. You know, like I can work hard for 18 hours, and then I'm like, oh, I'm all good. I'll just do it tomorrow. Like, didn't realise that a lot of it comes from my parents. You know, like just for them doing it. You know, so it's pretty.
And the big question is, you know, will you be able to do 18 hours when you're 50?
Yeah, definitely not.
And the thing is that if you don't have the financial ability, you know, then that's what's going to happen. So you might as well do it when you're 20 or 30, you know, because that's when the energy's there.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm starting to see now where I'm like, I still love working hard, but I'm real keen to work smarter. You know, like I do want to spend a bit more time with my kids. Like I work, you know, I've worked 6-7 days a week for 6 years or whatever, but I love it. But now the first time I've had the feeling where I'm like, I don't know if I want to go. I sort of want to see my kids. My kids have just started soccer. So I'm like, I really want to go. That's the first time it's ever happened to me where it's like work wasn't my priority. I'm like, I want to. So I think I'm starting to get into that journey. You know, I'm heading towards 40 now. So I think my businesses are sort of getting to that point where I can maybe massage myself out slowly, you know. So that's
the key. You've got to get yourself to that stage. You know, you can afford to do it.
Yeah.
But
all right, I'm going to shoot a few funny questions your way.
Okay, let's do it.
Just to finish up. Favourite music artist of all time?
Favourite music artist? Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm probably going to have to go for 2 women.
What is it?
2 women.
2 women.
The names of 2 women.
Okay, yeah.
Whitney Houston and Barbra Streisand.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
right. I think you're talking about a band. And I was like, I never heard of them. Yeah.
Band would have to be Queen and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I'll go with you on Queen. I like Queen. All right, Barbra Streisand, and who was the other one?
And Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston.
Probably 2 of the best female talents the world's ever seen.
Good voice. Favourite movie?
Favourite movie? It's got to be. I want to say The Godfather.
Is that too forward to say The Godfather? Or?
I want to say The Godfather. That's too predictable. The whole Rocky, you know, Rocky 1 to 8. You know, like I'm a huge fan. I mean, Stallone is the exact example. Yeah. Have you ever seen the interview with Stallone about how he got to where he is?
Oh, about his journey to make the first Rocky movie. It's intense.
Amazing. It's
unbelievable. Had to sell his dog and everything.
Yes.
It's crazy. Yeah. And then he bought his dog back. When he got his first check, he went and bought him.
But saying no to $250,000 because the terms weren't what he wanted. I mean, if you test a man's strength when you got nothing, you're living on nothing, and to say no because you believe so much in yourself and what you're about to do, I mean, that's easier said than done when you're facing that reality. You know,
$250,000 back then. When was the first Rocky movie come out?
That would have been probably equivalent to 20 million today.
Yeah, it would be.
At least.
It must have been what? 80s, was it? 70s?
It'd be early 80s.
Yeah.
Who's got Google?
That is crazy, actually. $250,000 in the 70s. To say no to that when you have no money. That's unbelievable, eh?
And only on the basis that he was believing in himself. That's what I'm saying. You know, it's that teaches you what that's all about.
Yeah,
you know,
seriously.
That's the lesson.
No, me and my dad love like the Rocky movies, like any of the fighting movies, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, we grew up on that stuff, but particularly the Rocky movies. Which one's your favourite Rocky?
It has to be the first one.
The first one,
yeah. Yo, Adrian.
I didn't mind the third one with Mr. T as well. But that's one of those ones where you could watch all of them and they're all good movies, eh?
Yeah.
Maybe except for the last one, but all of them I'm like, I'll watch this one again, you know, so good movies. But mate, I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're a busy guy, so for you to come on the podcast and tell your story, it means a lot to me, mate. And I reckon our viewers and listeners will get plenty of value from this, so thanks.
Jacob, been a pleasure, mate. Good to see you. And
Awesome.
I know you're going to do well, mate. Absolutely.
Thanks, mate.
Hey?
Thanks, buddy.
My
Awesome.
pleasure.
Nailed it. How good.